Welcome to your first lesson of Unit 4, Classifying Triangles. There are a couple different ways to name a triangle by angles and by sides, and we'll go over those. Okay, so we're just talking about classifying or naming triangles right now. All right, when we're classifying by angles, if you have a triangle with 3 acute angles, that is called an acute triangle. And remember, acute means less than 90 degrees. Okay? If you have a triangle with 1 obtuse angle, can't be more than 1 if you think about how the degrees add up, but that is an obtuse triangle. Okay? And that would mean greater than 90 degrees for obtuse. 1 right angle obviously means you'd have 1 angle equal to 90 degrees. That's called a right triangle. Okay. And then if you have 3 congruent angles, those all have to equal 60 degrees if a whole triangle adds up to 180. And therefore, it would be equiangular. Think about what the word is saying. Equal, angular, angles. Okay? And those angles would have to be 60 degrees if they were all congruent. All right, because a triangle adds up to 180. That's how you classify by angles, okay? Everything else, any other way to call a triangle is probably by the sides, if you were thinking of something else up here, okay? So we're gonna use the diagram and classify each triangle on these questions 1 through 5 by its angles only, okay? So if we look at the diagram, first of all, there's a couple things going on which we haven't super talked about, okay? This mark here by A, B, and E, since they all have a little curve and just one, that means those are equal. So anything with this little curve would mean it's the same, okay? And obviously we should know what that little box means. It means 90 degrees. And the line that the box carries to, that's what's perpendicular. So CE and ED, those are intersecting at 90 degrees. Okay, so let's look at the triangles these questions are talking about. So triangle CDE, okay, CDE has 1 right angle, so that's going to be a right triangle. You can write out the word triangle if you want. A right triangle. Okay? BCE next. If you watch from B to C to E. Okay, if you look at this triangle here, we've got to see if we have, well, it's not a right triangle, and not all the angles are equiangular. So you really have to see if you have an obtuse or an acute angle, okay? And maybe if you flip it, and if you look at BC, or if you look at CE, if you were to draw a perpendicular there, you can see that BC is going past that 90 degrees. Okay, so that's an obtuse. ECB is an obtuse angle. All right, that makes this triangle an obtuse triangle. Okay? Or you can write the word out if those little triangle symbols confuse you, because I draw the same symbol no matter what triangle it is. Okay, next, triangle ABE. That's our equiangular triangle because they all have that little curve at the corner. That means angle A equals angle, this angle here and this angle here. So they all have to be equiangular and 60 degrees. Okay, BDE. Let me get a different color in. Triangle BDE. From B to D to E here. Okay, this one's easier to tell what this big angle is here because you already have a 90 degrees coming down, and you can see that BE is going past where the 90 degree would be. Okay, so that triangle is obtuse triangle. And then CFE. C to F to E. It's this shaded in triangle here. Okay, so if we go to, probably EF is the easiest thing to see. I'm gonna make my paper straight on the recording window. And if I drew a perpendicular here to FE, you can see that this angle is clearly smaller than 90 degrees. And you could do that to any corner. Okay, that's going to be an acute triangle because it's smaller than 90 degrees. And that would work for any angle that you looked at. Drop a perpendicular and see if it's smaller than 90 or bigger than 90. Okay, that's classifying by angles. All right, now classifying by sides. We have 3 congruent sides. If that happens, well, hopefully you remember that. That's called an equilateral triangle. Equilateral sides, equal sides, okay? If you have 2 congruent sides, that's called isosceles. Just 2 sides that are the same length. And if you have no congruent sides, that's scalene. No sides are the same length. Okay? So now we're going to classify each triangle by its sides, and let's talk about the diagram first. So similar to the angles, if any side has 1 tick mark, that means those are all the same. Okay, so JK is congruent to KN, which is congruent to NJ, or JN, same thing. But KL and LN both have 2 marks. Those 2 are congruent to each other. Okay, so anything with 2 marks would be congruent to those. All right, let's go and see what it's asking. So triangle JKM first. JKM, oh, that's the whole triangle. Okay, well, if you look at JK, that's one of the sides. It has 1 tick mark. And then if you look at from JM, that's definitely bigger. So those 2 sides aren't equal. And then K to M, that definitely doesn't equal JK either. JK would just be a tick mark. So none of those sides are the same. That's a scalene triangle. I'll just write scalene there, just the side, okay? Or just to classify by its side. All right, KLN, I'm gonna fill that one in. KLN. So if you look at KL and LN, those both have 2 marks, but KN only has 1. So there's only 2 congruent sides there. That makes it isosceles. Okay. Then JKN, that is equilateral. They all have 1 tick mark. So equilateral. Okay? All right, 9 through 14 want you to classify by its angles and sides, okay? So if you're looking at 9, the angle that's happening here is a right angle. So that makes it a right. And then if you look at the 2 sides, there's 2 sides that are congruent only. So this is a right isosceles triangle. And this is the most specific classification you can give by angles and sides. Okay, so let's look at 10. We have 114 degrees. That's all that we know there. okay? So that's obtuse. Okay, and we don't really know anything else, anything about its sides to say if they're congruent or not. So this is scalene. There's no marks, and we can't assume that any sides are congruent if it's not given to us. Okay, so 11, we have equiangular and equilateral, okay? This is an equiangular, equilateral triangle. Because we all have 60 degrees for angles and 7 centimeters for the sides. Okay? All right, 12, 15, 18, 20. Those are all different. Okay, those are all different. So we know that it's scalene, but we have to see what the angles would be. Okay, so if I drop a perpendicular in this corner, the angle is less than 90. And even if you did it on the other side, those are less than 90 degrees. So acute scalene triangle here. Okay, 13. We know nothing about the sides in the diagram. You can't assume anything, but we have a right triangle or a right angle mark there. So this is right scalene triangle. All right, and then 14, we see 97 degrees. So classifying by angles, that's greater than 90. That makes this obtuse. And then we have 2 congruent sides only that are given to us. So isosceles triangle. I think I spelled that wrong. I-S-O-S. Whoops. Isosceles. There we go. Okay, that's it for the first page.